Chris, is Mark still into the picture? Oh, he's still very much in the round. Oh, Chris, he's found 3. It's down to a 2-on-2. Chris, can he close this with an ace? Oh my God!
He gives him a chance at least, and this CZ kill could be everything. Finally, Zeus, he does something!
Looking for a second, he connects it. Oh, and he gets a third as well. Surely he's not going to pull this off. Oh, Caldera, the man, the myth, the beast.
Zaiwu, no help really, but he's still hitting shots. He's already got 3. And 5. And oh my God, Zaiwu! Unbelievable!
By the Numbers has returned, but it's not the return of By the Numbers, it's the revenge of By the Numbers. We are back for our 3rd season here on the new Insight on Esports CSGO channel. Check around, there's some other shows that you might have seen in the past and some forthcoming there. And of course, this show is now sponsored by Esports Bet. The old name was DJ Esports. You might know they worked with me, they're now working with this company. And they right now are running a World's Prediction Series contest that includes the Major, includes MSI, includes basically everything going on right now for however many more days it lasts. This phase of it, it's free to enter. When you make an account, you get given some DJT, which is their token, it's a free to use thing. And basically think of it like a prediction contest. You make a bunch of bets with the DJT, and then if you can rack up enough on the leaderboard, so you get 56, when you get to like 60k, that then unlocks going into the later stage of the tournament where you can play for enormous money, like $300,000 USDT for the winner. And there's a whole bunch of people who will win. And as I say, it covers all of esports. You can cover all these different games and different areas of expertise. So if you want to go and play, sign up on Esports Bet. You get the free DJT up to a limit of 5,000 DJT every day that you log into the site. They will top you up another 1,000, which you can then use to make the bets. You'll see on some of my other shows like Competitive Edge on this channel with Monty, we actually place the bets and we show you how it works and all the odds and all that. Thanks to Esports Bet. If you like to gamble on esports or you're interested in gambling on it, consider Esports Bet.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Revenge by the Numbers. I'm your host, Richard Lewis. Joining me as he always does, it's the esports historian, Duncan Thorin Shields. And look, if this has gone the way that we've sort of planned it, there was kind of a rhyme to the reason. You're probably watching this the day or the day after that, after the very first episode in which you posted, what's the point in even releasing this? It's all out of date. The major's over. Now we're in Rostamania. Where's your Rostamania episode? Well, don't worry, that's coming too. But anyway, first of all, we are going to summarize the major that we've just had. Obviously, the major in Antwerp. We did a review of the earlier stages and some of the stories before it, including coaches not being in attendance and some that were in attendance, and the kind of disparity of that. Now we can talk about what Counter-Strike ostensibly should be about, and that is, of course, the games and the storylines and the performances. So look, I'm going to start off. I'm probably taking my life in my hands here, but I wanted to start off with sort of a critique of Furia, who many people
got off lightly, I noticed, from a lot of people, mate.
Absolutely. Well, considering they were many people's dark horse pick.
Yeah.
I mean, like, people were saying that was a legitimate pick. I didn't really agree with that. I felt top 8 was as far as they could go. But there were a lot of experts out there, a lot of pundits, a lot of casters, a lot of super fans, a lot of journalists. They were all sort of saying, look, Furia is a legitimate team. They can, really beat any team on their day. And yeah, I didn't really fuck with that as a concept. In fact, I thought Furia had a number of issues on their roster going in to the tournament. I didn't think it was a given they would make top 8. When they did and they went up against Spirit, Spirit were my dark horse pick. There was no doubt in my mind that Spirit were going to win, and obviously got absolutely destroyed. And they got destroyed because they had all the problems that we're now about to explore, but also Queserato probably had his worst game of the major, one of his worst games in a long time, just really, really massively underperformed considering how talented he is. So let's talk about Furia in general and where they are. I think they're a greatly diminished team compared to previous iterations of Furia, despite the addition of Safe, which I really liked as a pickup.
Yeah, the problem I have with them as a team is they're right in that bunch where, ignoring the like hype and the politics of the G2 Vitality moves, if we just look at the rosters, they're those teams where it's on paper that people get hyped about them. So it's the same with the Outsiders team, it's the same with G2, it's the same with Vitality. You look on paper, these are supposed to be like, that should be like a contender. That should be like a little dark horse. Like you say, when they get a bracket like they did, it should be like, at a minimum, you're meeting FaZe Clan. And hey, if you're really a contender, why can't you beat FaZe Clan? Why can't you be in the final of the major? But you see, instead, they're the ones getting beaten by people playing their first ever major. And I think the problem is, just like all on paper rosters, there's a reason we keep saying on paper. If they ever bloody did it in the server, we'd stop that, wouldn't we? Would say about what they're like in the server. Because in the server, they're nothing like they look like on paper. Like even the safe pickup, he's just an all right player in their team. I don't know if it's they don't emphasize him enough. I don't know if it's the whole like you were the star on a small club, but you go to the big club. Some people don't always adapt the same way. I actually think as well, even I'm sort of with you, like even that core of Keserato, Yuri, and Art that always looked money, it looks like it's regressed a little bit, mate. Like they're still good players in there, but I actually can't rely on them as a trio of players as much. And when I look at them as a team, that's also where I'm starting to feel like they're more in the sort of Outsiders Vitality camp, where it's like they've had a while now, mate. It's not like this is the first tournament. So like, what aside from the initial hype of that would be a cool lineup, what are we really buying into at this point in time? Like I actually feel like that team is a bit underwhelming. I think it should be better than it is. It should be a top 5 team. I don't know if it's the other teams leveling up. Obviously at this major, we even had some smaller squads we were aware were really good. See, it feels to me like the chance to be a top team. I don't know if it's going to come for the squad. It looks, I feel like I've seen them hit their ceiling now. This is the ceiling, it feels like.
Yeah, and look, the issue for me is that, you know, I think overall there's been a talent dip in the team, you know, and it's kind of been a little bit of a progressive, you know, kind of a deterioration. But the big you know thing I've kind of noticed is it's Art's.
Oh yeah, he's dropped off a cliff, mate. Yeah,
I mean, yeah, he's in like close to career worst form.
Yep.
If we extrapolate over the last few tournaments that they've performed at, and then if you go back to 2019, you know, I know it's a long time ago now, but that was when Fury really emerged as a legitimate contender to beating top teams, getting deep runs in tournaments. Art, and in particular his play style, the way he kind of broke the meta by being so aggressive, was, you know, a huge key component of it. And that, unfortunately, this is one of the downsides of having a unique playing style. You know, it can only work for you for so long. It's like, I remember, it's kind of reminiscent. I remember Happy, like when Happy was super effective was just because nobody could believe someone would lurk as hard as he would or bait as hard as he would. And he would just be in a place where you couldn't conceive someone would do it, and it would catch you off guard, and it would make his teams work because he had a lot of firepower to work with. And you add that X factor, suddenly you've got, you know, the potential to beat anyone. But then, you know, Art had this kind of hyper aggressive style. Now people just wait for him. They just neutralize it. They know what he's going to do. And I feel that it's like he never really got a plan B. He never really adapted his game. There was a brief period, obviously, where he was kind of the team's primary AWPer. That in itself, I thought, created a dynamic in the team that wasn't effective either. But I just feel overall, tactically, they're a bit flat. His individual levels of performance are a bit flat. And they really need to get back to the drawing board and find something that can work. Because I do think with the core of Yuri, Keserato, and Safe, I think that's a great 3 to build around. But I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what they can do. If Art is married to the team, essentially, then, you know, this picking up an academy player and trying to give them the necessary experience isn't going to work out, even though I don't think drop was the problem in Antwerp. So, yeah, the word is plateaued, I think, for me.
Yeah, the problem is, it's like you say, I mean, it applies to teams as well. Sometimes even the number one teams like this, they have a style that's so effective. But then obviously the other teams aren't idiots. They don't just sit on their hands. They go back and they go, right, what can I do within my approach to counter your style? Or do I need another player? Like maybe your style relies on being slightly more skilled than me, right? Bring in another piece of firepower. Let's get that. Let's level up maybe a more experienced player in this like supportive. Whatever you do, all the other teams are always reacting to the people who found success. So I've always thought the big mistake in Counter-Strike is My theory on a lot of those players is the reason they develop a super unique playing style is if you look at it in, like quite cynically, usually they have something a bit selfish and they just get to the point where normally you'd have to drop that because it's a bit selfish, but they become like amazing at it. So baiting, being super aggro. And for a while, it's like, well, perfect marriage. You like to do it. You're really effective at it and no one can stop you. No problem, right? The problem is when people start to counter it and people start to figure out what you're doing, a lot of those players just ride it to the bitter end and they really will just go all the way down the rankings, out of teams, into other teams. And I've always thought the mistake in Counter-Strike is this. People say how you have to like adapt or etc. It's not that you have to literally copy what the top team does, but every time someone brings something new, you have to look in your toolkit and say, what do I have that actually can essentially play against that? You don't have to be as good. In fact, the joke is I could even use, because I rarely ever use fucking soccer references here, could even use what just happened in the fucking European Cup final. Basically, if you watch that, clearly Liverpool are the better team, but the other team played exactly the way you should play against all of Liverpool's strengths. And they basically pressured their few vulnerabilities so that if you got one break, you could win the game. And that's basically what they did. So to me, the problem with teams like this is they always stay stuck in the way that they go. And if you notice in interviews, those people, they just become more and more bitter, unfortunately, over the years. Suddenly it becomes that like everyone else is wrong, even though the results aren't coming. And this is the downside, unfortunately, that whole thing of like, don't listen to anyone else, just believe in yourself. It's like, yeah, to some degree, you got to have people in your circle who give it to you for real, though. And if someone came to those players for real, if you remember in the early days, the logic was, we've got to get some of you guys out of here. Like Furia looks like a dodgy org, those massive contracts. Now with the other orgs falling apart, Fury is the place to be. So for me, you've got to go the other way now, guys. Now it's got to be right. Let's realistically look at this team. What's not working and who do we get in? Because to me, it's got to be like, I think at this point in time, the obvious move is in-game leader. We've got to, I don't know who it is. Look, it's hard. Maybe it has to be, fuck it, could even be Taco, by the way. It has to be someone, though. I think someone has to take over being the IGL because I look at those pieces and those pieces can be a lot better than this. There's absolutely nothing against people like Kesserat or Yuri. They are mega players. They deserve better for me.
Yeah, totally agree. And you know, listen, I'm not too sure if we will see like some sort of, you know, blockbuster move, if you like. Fury have a tendency to sort of box a bit clever in the transfer market. I think they've had their fingers burned, you know, a number of times with stuff like the Henny move, and you know, they're probably a little bit adverse to working with some of the more big names, let's say.
The irony of having Neymar associated with your club and not understanding you might have to spend all the money in the world to get the right players. Like, you know what, guys? If I can't convince you now, I'm never going to have that.
Yeah, it's true. Next up, NIP. I thought, you know, it was a mixed bag for NIP. Let's sort of, you know, cover everything that went on. As we talked about last episode, there was the story about the sticker money. It's you know, I know this is going to sound weird, but this is like Richard the podcaster talking, not Richard the journalist. But it is gonna, you know, it is going to negatively impact on teams, I believe, when stories like any news story, any distraction, it gets social media chatter, and it is going to impact on your focus potentially. But I think overall, there were a number of things that really gave me kind of pause for thought about this NIP lineup. So first of all, we know Hicham Chahine, the CEO, he's on record as saying he believes that the NIP roster isn't complete until Device comes back. Hampus, on the other hand, someone who, by the way, he seems really out of sync with
weird, isn't
management. It's like he doesn't get the memo. You know, he did this before when they were bringing in the academy players, and the NIP management were probably talking about the NIP system. And Hampus is on HLTV confirmed going, I don't know what's going on with any of this shit. I just do what I'm told. And it's like, oh, okay. Is it a system? Is it not? You know? And so he said, this is the 5 I want, as in, no, Device isn't coming back. Not if I have any say in it. And it really gives a kind of a them and us kind of feel to the management and the players in NIP. They don't seem to be on the same page. They don't seem to be synced in their beliefs. And with that said, you know, it probably is making top 8 again and taking a map off phase before, you know, a capitulation on Inferno, but it's probably a better run than you could have accounted for. The Device question was being asked ahead of this event. You know, first major where we're going to see Esatag up for the team. He gave a decent account of himself. I'm still not sold on it moving forward, but he did decent numbers. And overall, I think they can feel pretty pleased with this campaign, even though I did get the impression that they had set themselves a standard to go a bit further in the tournament.
Yeah, the thing that I find interesting is when that line comes out, and by the way, this is where the fact Device played for Astralis and then Nip is going to seem so fucking weird for the rest of history. They're the same fucking org. They're just the same dickheads who all think sports is the secret. And because they got a bit of money through the door, they've mastered esports. They all think they have sprawling systems that create players and like none of these things exist, of course, in reality. In fact, if you just took the nameplates off, no one would know that these were the product of these amazing systems. Look at the teams they've got. And the joke is, and as you say, just like Glaive with this statement today, we might get to at some point, they're also saying, like, if people don't know, Glaive did a tweet where he just includes the words like, and 2 hours sports director. So you're tweeting it out the guy now, not just go down the hall and just go, hey, by the way, that idea wasn't right. Like, what is going on here? Like, same thing with you. Like, I don't get it, mate. I get it if the player says nothing, but the idea the player's going to contradict what the org says is just really weird, especially when these are the bloody in-game leaders, the guys that you'd think you'd have on side and would know your plan. So to me, that I think all of a sudden, when I hear that line, I start to understand a lot more about why it was so important to have Broland come in. That sounds like something the other Swedish players in NIP would ask for. That's why it starts to make sense, why they've actually been so good since Device hasn't been there. They're way better than they should have been. Because guess what? They really might have thought, fuck it, he's never coming back. Forget that pipe dream, boys. We're not waiting until next event. This event's it. Does our careers start playing? And get them and their new coach, what an admirable job they've done, because every bloody other org would have an excuse. I mean, the joke is, he's not even in Astralis, and the Astralis fans all complain. Yeah, but if Device comes back, that's their fucking line. They really are on that fucking meme thing of like, Device ain't walking through that door. Are you sure? Are you sure he's not? Like, fucking hell, that can't be the standard. So I think Nip's done a fucking amazing job. I even think the Broland move low-key looks like a fantastic sign. He looks like he's slotted right in. He's as good as you'd hope he would be. You see at this event, they're not even a complete team, but those 3 riflers are just fucking good, boys. Those are really good players right now. Coach seems to have a good grasp on the team. I still have my questions, like you said. The S-Tag one, I think that has to be resolved at some point in time. I don't really know that they have the true IGL. Doesn't look like it's mattering as much now. Seems like they're getting results. I think quietly they've become a solid squad. Like it's actually a team I enjoy watching play. Before it used to be one where that had the whole thing of like, yeah, but there's no divide. You just keep thinking of that a million times. I don't think that anymore. I just enjoy them for what they are, mate.
I know you've been critical of Hampus in the past. Do you fuck with the narrative that he deserves a lot of credit because he's having to continually work with like stand-ins, academy players, different players?
That makes it harder for sure. The thing for me with him is this. I just think it's a bit like the art scenario. I just think he's better if he'd just be an individual player and someone else carried IGL duties. I don't even get the vibe, quite frankly, themselves with that whole ZTR narrative and things he said on pod. It sounds to me like he isn't 100% in on being the IGL. I imagine if you came to him tomorrow and you just told him like, right, we've got MSL, because I imagine he'd just go, yeah, no problem. You take that. I'll be back to my shit. Because as an individual player, I think he's very effective. I think he's like mad underrated in that regard. The problem is if we pair him with being an IGL, it's a bit like what happened to Blame F. Eventually, Blame F had to carry the can that the results of the team weren't good enough. But once you stop him being the IGL, now it's just praise, mate. Now I've got no criticisms of you. You do your job. You bagger.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, for me, I kind of feel that he's never like the whole T-side thing was valid criticism, but I think people have never really, kind of given him the kind of props he deserves as an IGL. I mean, like I've been on kind of the Hampus, train for a while. I wanted him to get this gig in the first place. And, listen, I'll tell you, the way this organization is focused, it clearly doesn't really care about the day-to-day problems that face IGLs in a team. Like, how can I come up with a fucking playbook if I, first of all, have to explain that playbook multiple times to multiple people, all with different learning styles and different ways that they metabolize information, but also like, okay, we don't have Fozy in the team anymore. Now S-Tag's the AWPer. Well, he might not fuck with the tactics I've worked, extensively on. And by the way, I already changed them one time because before we had Device. And not only is Device an AWPer, he's our star player. And so he's always going to get input. I have to keep him happy. Now it's a little bit different when it's an academy player. Maybe I can do things a bit more. I want. He's probably had to revise his tactics like repeatedly. And then on top of that, getting everybody bedded in and friendly with each other. A good IGL will play a little bit of a role in that, encouraging people, making bridges, conflict resolution. You think about Carrigan at FaZe historically and what makes him a great IGL. It's like, I think Hampus has done a fucking legitimate job here where he should be, considered. not like one of the best IGLs in the world. Let's not go too far. But I mean, he needs to be respected as one of the top working in-game leaders right now, currently, given all the challenges he's had to overcome. I mean, that's where I'm at with it mentally, at least. But yeah, back to the device question. I just want to wrap a bow on it because I don't think we're ever talking about him within the context of NIP ever again. It's over, right? He's gone.
Yeah. Feels like it at this point in time, based on everything I've heard, even these current things we're talking about here from the NIP side, everything suddenly starts to hint towards that. Like, the real crazy thing to me is it starts to make me also wonder if that stupid Hitcham Jaheim cheat, which instantly got deleted, was like some sort of fucking chess move. Like, right, drive the price up on device because I secretly want to. These guys aren't smart. The problem you have to realize is you have to get their pattern of what they're doing. No, exactly. Like, it doesn't work that way, mate, but whatever. I will say, though, like, sadly, I do think when we look back, that will just go down as one of the stupidest moves of all time, especially if any of the reasons as to why it happened come out. It will age very, very poorly. It'll just be looked at, sadly, as someone did just burn a year of his career for no real reason. Well,
look, I'll go one further on that front. It'll go down as one of the worst signings of all time. It'll easily eclipse Snacks' $300,000 acquisition to Mouse Sports. How can I say that? Well, because Snacks actually fucking played.
Yeah, true.
We're about to go into June. Device hasn't played since the second week of December. He went to a handful of tournaments with this team, including a fairly insipid performance at the major in Stockholm, where a domestic team really should have set themselves a higher standard.
Sure.
I think top 8 with this squad here is a much better achievement than top 8 in Stockholm. Absolutely. In your home nation, when they were like ranked number 2 in the world at that time. So yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, if it is the reputed €1 million transfer fee, which, spoiler, watch this space, that's almost certainly not true. It's been wasted money. And I also get the vibe as well, because, we all see Device out there grinding and playing FPL and stuff like this. I think he wants to be on a team, just maybe not this one. I think mentally he's probably ready to come back now. And I think he might even have wanted to come back for this major. Like, it seems very, very weird the way things are being done. And like, just to tie it together, we'll talk about this cursed IEM Dallas event in the next episode, but just to tie it together, they needed a sub for that event, and they bring back ZTR, who just left their academy, and not Device, the guy who you had as a sub for the major. Nah, he's gone. Like, I mean, he's 100% gone at that point. So yeah, and by the way, he's got the paperwork and everything. So yeah, whatever. Seems to me like they just actually made a blockbuster move, didn't think it through, something broke down, and now they've just kind of like wanted it to peter out. I mean, I also was told that because he's on sick leave, the way the Swedish state works for an employee is that they'll pick up the costs as long as he's got valid doctor's certification.
Oh, mate.
Like 80% of
this salary. Is what I hate about esports. Now I have to start calling into question this whole thing about mental health.
Well, yeah, I know. Yeah,
has to now be questioned. Doesn't mean I'm saying it didn't happen, but it has to be questioned.
Yeah, no,
that's reality. I mean, when you know there's literally an incentivized aspect where that might even be necessary to make some sort of statement like that.
Yeah, I think so. It's like, don't get me wrong. I absolutely do believe Device had, mental health problems, and I believe he had an extreme physical response to those problems.
Of course, yes.
But I also think, just reading between the lines and looking at all the pieces in play, I think he probably wants to be back to playing on a team. And maybe that team is Astralis. Maybe it's another team. Maybe it's any team. Maybe it's this team. Players want to play at the end of the day. And I think Device is looking at it. And it's like you say, he's not getting any younger. I mean, this is like a whole year of his career that's essentially been wasted. He's missed a major. That can't feel good. That's going to severely impact on all of the records and everything else that we have down the road. So, yeah, I think it's going to be interesting because, if the Astralis return rumors are true, you're going to have to wonder what this whole fucking thing was about in the first place. It just looks so clumsily handled from start to finish. Right, so next up, this is the one, and you'll enjoy this. Heroic. man alive. Right. Here's a question for a historian. Are they bigger chalk artists than the old TSM lineup, the pre-Glaive joining Astralis, where they were perennial runners-up?
I think I have to say yes, because here's the thing. At least they were fucking runners up. At least they could win. The problem with this team is, like, it's why again, without getting ahead of myself, it's why them just dropping out entirely out of that Dallas is like, you motherfuckers are so cursed. You're on some cursed monkey paw shit. That was one of the few events you look like the road was open to win, you idiots. Yeah. That's where you catch phase in sort of the post-major hangover still. They're still loving that shit. Everyone else has standings. You rock up. You get through an easier bracket. You get a couple of easy games. You have one big match you have to win, bish by sports, suddenly you got a trophy. Suddenly you're on that Grand Slam fucking hunt yourself. Instead, what happens? 0 trophies ever, basically fuck all finals ever. And yet they do the same thing every time. In some ways, they remind me of that team, but they're a worse version, because what that team would do was more like this. They would win the smaller event featuring all the same teams. This team, it's like they can beat all the teams in the group stage. If it's in the group stage, they can beat Na'Vi, mate. You see it. Like, they can beat everyone. The problem is when it's a big pressure match, they beat themselves. And that's why, to me, they are chokers as well. Because when I look at this squad, it can't just be the opponent, because the amount of opponents it's happened to is crazy now. It doesn't matter the circumstances. Anytime it's the big stage match, it always happens to these guys. And then on top of it, it's why I've even said that angle that, like, I don't know if Cadian gets that. Like, I don't think your public persona vibes with your teammates, mate, because they look like the guys who want as little pressure as possible. They look like the guys who don't want this to be a bragging rights match or to be considered the favourite. They look like the guys who, by the way, like those Gambit guys, almost wish we could rewind the clock and not give you all that praise because of the online era. Because the online era's expectations have fucked these teams up the arse. If we had no online era, the story with these teams would be like up-and-coming squads. Like, wow, another top 8. Sure, they haven't broken through yet, but let's see what happens in the next. The problem is, because we've all seen the online era, now most people were sort of out on this squad. Like, I have to say, I knew this team was fucking losing. I even thought in the match, like, look, they came close to beating Na'Vi, but this is the heroic story. It's always so close to winning and then a capitulation. That's the other problem with the choker to me, is you can lose close games. Losing close games is one thing. They also do have those halves where you just see them mentally broken, and then it's just like, right, the game's gone. It's coming away. It's why I even think it's now splashing onto Stown a little bit, in my opinion, because the problem is, individually, mega player, but he isn't the player. Like, he's not fucking, like, put it I'll use another football example. The thing I always thought was mega about the Portuguese Ronaldo is he really would just always score a goal when he had to. Anytime it was a massive game and you need to one goal to it, he'll get that goal. Stown's the player where it's like, he'll get a couple of chances. If they come his way, he'll do his job. He's a good fundamental player. He's not breaking the game. And so if as heroic goes, so Stown will go, unfortunately.
Yeah. I mean, look, I'll add to that point as well. You know, the reason that their chokers are in those close games, it's fine to lose close games, but you win some as well, right? Because you've
got to win some. Yes, exactly.
Yes. You know, that's the nature of the beast. It feels like heroic don't do that.
No.
And, you know, I have to say as well, like, it's kind of...
One thing I'll just toss in this as well, because I forgot to say this. This is why they'll never get this. I know this will still hit the triggers in all the stupid people. So you go for it. Write the YouTube comments, write the threads about how we hate heroic. This is one of the reasons, if people don't get it, why I keep stressing like that they over celebrate the silly group stage results. Exactly. The joke is, I want to see that energy from Cadian that he had against Nico there. No, that don't use a silly Twitter beef to be the ultimate one. Show me it in the playoffs. Show me against Na'Vi, mate. People have disrespected you. People
show me the best of 3.
Yeah, exactly. Bring that energy then. That's when I want it. Yeah. Instead, it's like you blow all your energy on the meaningless group stage game. And then in the big playoff game, you just quietly lose, sheepishly get red in the cheek and shake the other guy's hand. Fuck that noise, mate. Come on. Like Richard's saying, if these are really close games, one or two's got to go your way. You've got to get your share, surely.
Yeah, I mean, look, on that point, like the problem is that I feel. Listen, I get it. I understand what Cadian is trying to do. I understand it totally from a psychological perspective. He's trying to be a lightning rod. He's trying to hype up his players. He's trying to show them that, you know, there's nothing to fear here. We can be fucking, you know, we can be hyped and pumped up, and I'll throw a chair over and I'll be the center of attention, and I'll even make a fool of myself if needed. But don't you worry, all you got to do is turn up and play. But the problem is, you know, Cadian isn't an elite level AWPer. He's not going to take over a game.
Yes.
This team basically lives or dies by Stown's performances. And unfortunately, it isn't, they don't have enough because one player will go missing, and heroic to work has to be all five ready to step up to the big occasion. And the sad truth is often it's Cadian himself who goes missing in these big championship games. Didn't happen a lot here at this major, fair enough. We'll talk about Refresh in a second and his potential future in the squad. But I'm gonna tell you, the way they went out of the tournament, after getting battered on Nuke, coming back into it, and then Cadian team flashing his teammate in the only possible way they could have conceivably lost the round would be if Cadian, through a terrible flash, blinded his teammate. It was the only way they could lose, and they did it.
The best part is the camera was even on the teammate because his teammate was about to get like a lineup and kill two people. Like that. So, like any other POV, you don't even see the flash in the same way, but you just see his teammate about to shoot them, and then he gets blinded. And you're like,
it was such a perfect flash. If memory serves me right, I think somebody thought it was a flash from an RV player because they couldn't see. So they were like, I think one of the casters might have said it. Certainly when we were watching the game on the No Majors Club, we were like, was that an RV flash? And then we like rewatched it and we were like,
I don't blame you. It was a great flash.
Yeah. It was too perfect. Yes. And so, look, I'll also say on Nuke in particular, Refresh went missing. He's done this a lot. This was a terrible, terrible tournament for Refresh. And so we get asking questions like Heroic have now took this lineup to a kind of successful mediocrity. They are going to do okay, but you also know they are never going to win. Outside of ESL Pro League, it hasn't really been, like great on the international circuit for them. And so maybe they might want to get thinking about roster changes.
And that wasn't one of the studio events as well. So like, again, stages are there. They can't do it, mate. Yeah. That's another thing I think it's a weird thing about their team I want to ask you about though. Because obviously they've been in that really weird spot where they used to be a tiny org that was way overperforming. Now they've got money in theory. But you notice the issue is this. When Astralis was dicking around with their lineup, it allowed this team to get the players in that made them even better. But that's one thing I wonder about. Have you noticed now there's never any rumours about Heroic? There's never any rumours that their players go anywhere or that they get anyone. So I also feel like they're in this weird place where, like I said, I hear the rumours that the Valde and Device people are going to Astralis. I never hear anything about like a big player going to Heroic. Like, I also feel like eventually a roster move's got to be on the cards. You can't keep the lineup forever.
I think it's this, right? This is my take on it. Now, this is just speculation on my part, right? But I know quite a bit about the Danish scene. And Astralis are so unbelievably popular in Denmark. They are essentially the only show in town.
Yes.
That it's like, do you want to spend millions to try and overtake that? And could you even? Even
if put a lot of groundwork in now, for sure, years.
Like, let's be clear. Heroic is the best team in Denmark.
Absolutely.
They are nowhere near the most popular. And so probably from a business perspective, it doesn't make sense to go out and make big money signings to maintain your skill superiority, which has been there for a long, long time, because you're not going to get into that market saturation. You're not going to be able to suddenly synthesize a history where you had the greatest lineup of all time. You are not going to be able to have unbelievably popular players with years of tenure, and charisma, in your history. You can't do that. All you can do is try and win tournaments and hope more and more people come over to your side. It probably also doesn't help that the most charismatic player on the squad by a long, long way, obviously, is Cadian. Sure. And he seems to lurch from being incredibly charismatic and saying the right thing one day to being anti-charisma and saying ridiculous things the next day. And so, Cadian himself is kind of like a complex character, and somebody that I think he has a general understanding of how the PR game is played, but often accidentally sets his team up to fail and look stupid, which I don't think helps his young squad at all. So there's lots of issues, but I think it just boils down to why spend money when you will never be more popular than Astralis. You would need 5 years of sustained success, winning majors, and probably having another 2 or 3 players that are incredibly good with PR and public facing and streaming and all that other stuff. It's too much to build. So why even begin? The one thing I will say is they must be on the phone to Valde. I know it looks like Valde is going to join Astralis, but for me, he fixes all your problems, or at least 2 or 3 of them.
It'd be a great pickup.
Great
personality as well, if people don't know.
Yeah, I mean, big personality, former IGL, very intelligent in how he thinks about the game, likes to help with mid-round calling if required, not fazed by pressure, and if refresh is the guy who has to go. I think overall at this tournament, he had something like a 0.87 rating. It was really bad. If it has to be refreshed, that has to go, then, get somebody who's mature, get somebody with experience, get somebody who I say is like, not going to get phased in those high pressure tournaments, and then help Cadian out. Maybe he doesn't have to throw a chair across a room and act as a lightning rod and make a tit of himself all the time. If he has a kind of like a wingman, so to speak. So I'm very surprised Heroic haven't been linked with him, honestly.
Yeah. Like I say, I never hear anything behind the scenes. Not even like I'd like to go. I think you never hear anything. You'd almost think they exist in some fucking parallel phantom zone or some shit.
Yeah, it's crazy. So the other team we should probably talk about is, of course, Spirit. They are the revelation of the major. And we kind of I'm writing an article at the moment, right, where I'm kind of exploring this whole emergent esports iron curtain is the phrase, where we're very highly likely to see Russian teams that don't want to relocate, or Russian players who don't want to relocate, and certain orgs, irrespective of whether or not they relocate, are just going to be playing essentially against themselves, maybe Belarusians, maybe Chinese teams, but they're going to be on their own side of this esports iron curtain, and it's only
you notice most people haven't even considered this still. We tried to get ahead of this story. I did that video probably 2 months ago now or something, but it still hasn't ticked for people, because here's the problem with it's basically people on Reddit, let's be real, because Reddit isn't actually about having discussions and stuff. It's about pretending you're also an insider because you watch more interviews than everyone else, and trying to go, well, actually, I think, Blame F would have said that if he'd wanted to. The guy who's always the well, actually reply guys. That's who Reddit is, basically. Yeah. One thing I've noticed they did is this. They love to be the stupidest people on every legal and political matter. They'll hear one simple thing and they'll go, right, that's a rule. And they'll repeat it endlessly. So in the same way as the classic one is, they just repeat endlessly. It's impossible to have booths in esports because of fire restrictions. Then I just watch Dota all year long and go, well, I guess my eyes are a bit deceiving me, Rich. This isn't happening. Obviously, this must be in Timbuktu or fucking, some fucking island of plastic floating in the Atlantic. These can't be real vents. So similarly, right, because in the early days, G2 were the most proactive. Spoiler, I told Carlos, and one that shot for this, mate, it's going to bite you up the arse. They were the ones pushing, right, what's the solution? They saw, right, maybe we can get Monacy, like Serbian nationality or something, or a passport, and that'll help him. He can move there. We've got a base of players there, and that's going to be our get-out plan. They know Joke Richard took that, copy and pasted it, and were like, right, every single Russian player I have ever heard of will just move to Serbia and get the nationality, and they are all fine. There is no problem. We can continue. That's why to this day, they're all still like, notice they all still think the only reason any of those players could be leaving Navi is like the social media tweets and likes and things like they can only access the world through the prism of shitty drama. And like they can't ever actually look at like what real world logistics make it hard. Because when I looked into this, the first thing I thought, mate, was, well, it's all well and good if you're a G2. It's all well and good if you're Navi. Maybe a team like VP, if they get the right money, can get this done. But even then, they'd have needed the players to leave. I actually personally think almost everyone below that is in deep shit. And I personally think the Spirits, the Entropics, the phase, like the Forzas of the world, I really wonder what's happening to these guys. Some part of me feels like it's like you say, they're just going to be in an alternate circuit where they don't interact with what we consider Counter-Strike essentially. And we'll just essentially have to memory hole they ever existed up to the moment when it happens, whenever it sounds like it's going to be in the summer. So I get the vibe. There's not going to be an out for a lot of these people.
Yeah, and what's also worth noting is, we've already seen, again, just to come YM Dallas briefly, but not explore it in depth.
Look at the visa shits there, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, like America.
Start.
Right. the American esports space is moving away from Counter-Strike. We can feel that.
Absolutely. I mean, everyone's going balls deep in Valorant.
Yep, and I feel that coupled with these visa restrictions against, like officially there is no nation that is denying Russian people visas on the basis of nationality. That's the official line. But I think certainly with the current geopolitical situation, you are going to have a much, much harder time than you would before. And spoiler, it was already mega difficult.
It was, yes.
To get into the United States with a visa.
I think if I had to guess, if you go back in history, I'm talking about 1.6 as well. If you go and look at big American events, they are the most famous events ever for having to have stand-ins for CIS players. Like we're talking about even the Navis of the world have had to go with stand-ins. Like actually, funny enough, people like Snacks himself have missed events in America in the past.
Yep. And it's like, it's always been a finicky nation to get the correct paperwork to go and compete for. That's why.
I can't even get the visa both times. The 2 times I've applied, fans, I've had the visa thing where I get denied and I have to go back with more evidence. Go through. So if I'm doing that, good luck to the young guy you've never heard of from Russia who's just applied for his first visa. Like, you can hope.
It's really tough. And so, you've got that going on. And you have to start wondering, like, what is the benefit? What is the benefit to even going to those American tournaments in the first place? Where again, I'm going to be very surprised if IEM Dallas is a sellout. And so what's it for? You're chipping away at a market that's never coming aboard for you anyway. So you've got these like coupled with everything else that's going on, there's just huge disincentives for this type of travel in the first place. It's a lot of money, a lot of expenditure, a lot of problems, a lot of red tape, a lot of paperwork for not a lot of rewards. So why would you do it? So, I think we are going to see now some orgs aren't going to be affected. And this is where it gets interesting because Team Spirit are obviously one of them. They relocated to Serbia. They've handled the messaging around the geopolitical situation in a way that a lot of other orgs have like fucked up, namely Virtus.pro. Like, for example, when Spirit went to a Dota tournament, they wore white jerseys with the word peace across instead of any sponsors or anything like that. Now, by the way, spoiler, if they were living in Russia and not Serbia, they probably would have been arrested.
Of course not.
Upon their return.
Yes.
But regardless, they've handled the messaging. But here's the thing, like, Team Spirit they haven't said who owns them or any of this stuff. And it's just crazy. It's just like wildly inconsistent. So I'm kind of like trying to cobble it all together and trying to make sense of it because I don't know what's going to happen to the CIS region. And viewership was down at this major because of everything. And the CIS region was a huge,
for sure,
part of our like success in viewing figures. I feel that Navi's business approach has maybe made some of their Russian fans not want to support them anymore.
Understandably.
And don't get me wrong, it's misguided, but you know how.
No, but that's how people are going to emotionally react, of course. Yes, that's why it's understandable. Yeah, it's human nature, unfortunately.
Yeah, and it's, there's a lot going on. There's for me, there's almost like a special poignancy to this Team Spirit performance because you have to wonder, whether you'll ever see anything sort of like this again. This is a team that has a core of Russian players that have been around the block, very, very talented. Dexter was absolutely mega this tournament.
Should absolutely be the next global superstar if we didn't have the circumstances we have at the moment in the scene. Like, you can see why there was those rumors, but there was even there was rumors like TL were fucking attached to potentially get him, and I can see why it would have been a great pickup.
Yep, but the bigger part of the Spirit story is, and this is clearly something the organization excels at, is that they managed to find 2 players who, I'll be honest, watching them play online, I was like, I'm not really vibing with this at all. But this was their first ever tier 1 LAN. The first ever, I think, for Siren. I think Patsy had played like 2 local LAN events where total prize money for him was like $200 or something. That was the totality of their LAN experience. They've come to a major and they've made it to the semifinals. I mean, it's absolutely unbelievable.
Without their coach at that.
Yeah, without their coach, exactly.
That's mental, innit? I know.
Which, by the way, I never want to hear about, like, whining about adversity ever again, because, like, Spirit have just made a complete mockery of that. I mean, they might feel a bit aggrieved. They might feel with their coach there, maybe they could have gone even further and made it to the final. But I mean, listen, not only did they play incredibly well, not only is it an amazing story based on the relative experience, but they served up one of the best games in the major. The FaZe Spirit match was absolutely mega. It was a 2-0. It was close. It was back and forth. Had a fantastic cast associated with it as well. And yeah, that was probably the game of the major for me. They were just a joy to watch. And I'm hoping that because they have relocated to Serbia, at least this team is still going to be able to get to international tournaments and build on this, because this is a very exciting start.
Yeah, I mean, look, even beyond the others, where who knows how it goes for the newer players that are coming in. Obviously, the squad itself, people wouldn't have expected him to go as deep. Dexter is absolutely someone where, like, I just hope he can keep playing in the Western scene, because this is someone who can be a very special player. Like, he could be within that vein of the simples, the electronics. That we're talking about the real star players, the people who could actually just do incredible. He could be a top 10 player this year in HLTV if they went to enough events. Like, that's on the table for someone like that. You can just see it in the eye test, checks out like a motherfucker. And last major, he was at this level, needed more experience. Now he's had the 2 majors. Now's the time when you blow up if you get the chance to play.
Yeah, totally. And you know, like I say, the CEO seems pretty savvy. I'd still like to know who owns the team, because I do worry about there being a potential sting in the tail somewhere, that if it turns out it's someone like an oligarch type figure, it could completely isolate them again from the international community and all of their efforts. You know, with the relocation to Serbia, their profoundly anti-war statements, it would all be for naught. And you know, that would be fucked up, because as I said, I think they're one of the most exciting teams we've got now in terms of the global shakeup that's about to happen in Rostermania. Remember, they've got their rookie stars now, you know, so everyone else is going to be you know, adding pieces, removing pieces. Team Spirit are going to shoot up the rankings. I mean, you know, watch this space. The other team probably we should talk about, and then we'll get into the final and talk about everything that's happened there, is Ents. You know, we did feel that Ents were another good dark horse pick. You know, Spinks was one of the players at the tournament. We predicted that. We said he would be. We also predicted great things from over the course of the year, although gonna miss IEM Dallas, but like so many others. But I mean, obviously they lacked that big game experience at a major, and they were really flat against Na'Vi, I thought, especially on their map pick and nuke. You know, they got battered. That was definitely there for the taking, because Na'Vi hadn't been playing nuke. I know they were sort of like picking it, like they were happy to play it, but you know, they haven't. After their streak got broke, they sort of went away from it. And so I feel like Ents sort of let themselves down a little bit in this game. You know, Hades kind of went a bit missing, but whatever. I mean, at the end of the day, fantastic campaign. And if you'd have said, you know, you're going to go there and make it to the, you know, quarterfinals, semifinals of a major before this, you know, they would have absolutely took it. I think it's a, you know, fantastic story and kind of a fantastic end to the first half of the year for Ents.
For me, Ents is a team it's an example of how when you get really, really good, there are things outside of the server that you have to fix mentally. You have to sort of even understand that you are good enough to play in this scenario. That team with all the big names, they're not better than you just because they've got the big names. It's not a scenario where you're not, because you've never been here, you can't win this match. So these are things you have to overcome. That's why you have to be there a few times usually before it ticks over for you, and it's your turn to go to the final. Like, I genuinely feel like if they played, even maybe Na'Vi, but they played you in the quarterfinals where you get them as soon as you're in the playoffs, that's a game you might win. Once you're in the semis, you're already thinking, now could be the final. In this scenario, you played Na'Vi in that one. Hey, maybe they play a bit off the game like they did against Heroic. You don't want any of these thoughts in your mind. You want to just go in, play your best game, hope it's enough, you get through. If they'd even been on the other side of the bracket, I'd love to see how they would have fared against a FaZe, or if they played an NIP or a Spirit or something. I think there's a lot of worlds where they could have gone even further, but let's be real. Semi-finals of the World Championship honestly, it's fucking unbelievable for where this team was last major, where they were 6 months ago, and for the organization. Like, I'm going to do some stuff on this soon. This organization, it cannot be luck, guys. You don't do it in two totally different set of circumstances like this within a 3-year span and get right back to the top of the game. Like, the joke is, these guys actually are like what Liverpool's done in terms of, like, they haven't needed the same like billions that fucking the Man City's have. But even more so, this is like if the Leicester City squad had just kept winning after they done it the first time. Yeah. It's impossible to be as good as this squad is. So I just hope they can make the most of the next 6-7 months, because to me, the clock's begun on Spinks. Like, a lot of teams are now aware this guy is phenomenally good. There's no way you could be paying him enough. And let's be real, he's not from Finland. He has no special connection. He has to stay in. Hence, so my opinion, the window is now opened. You've got a chance to actually win tournaments, to be a top 5 team in the world, to do big things this summer going into the end of the year. And then you have to know if you're Ents, eventually someone's going to sign Spinks and he is going to leave and he's going to be on a bigger squad. That there's a timer on that one. But right now, everything points up to me. It can only get better from here, I think.
Yeah, well, just to add to that, HLTV did their extra valuable player piece that they do at the end of the majors, and they had him overall at 3rd, and that was after Bit and Simple. So, arguably the most valuable player outside of Narvi based on their statistical analysis. I'll read you a little bit of this. They said Spinks has been the breakout star of 2022, which that's probably an understatement. He said that he has a higher multi-frag frequency than Simple, where it's 23.7%. He's now getting a 1.10 opening kill rating as well. He had a 1.68 rating when they beat FaZe at the very start of the Legends stage. He completely took over that game of the team that eventually went on to lift the trophy. Had a 1.51 rating against Outsiders, a 1.45 rating against Heroic, and a 1.47 rating in the Copenhagen Flames game, which was his stage debut. So, what you've got there is you've got a player who actually turns up in the big games. Despite having no experience, he's completely unfazed, completely fearless. Stage doesn't appear to get to him either. So yeah, super promising player. And like you say, you have to wonder, if Ents haven't, because I know Natu was out there. By the way, get well soon, brother. He caught the fucking COVID. But he's probably pulled him to one side and said, "Listen, we could renegotiate your contract. 5 years, a little bit more money, maybe massive buyout, because you want to get that in, because motherfuckers are going to come for this guy."
Oh, absolutely.
So, but yeah, I'm super happy for Ents as well. And all it took was getting rid of Arlo, because that was a dark time when you were anxious for that. So yeah, happy they turned a corner in the end. Right, let's do it then. The big one, the final. FaZe Na'Vi. FaZe got their major. We'll talk about them second. Let's talk about Na'Vi. Look, we had a feeling, I know you shared this feeling, that Na'Vi weren't going to be at the peak of their powers at this event. There's a lot going on, a lot of mitigating circumstances for that. There was also the Boomich question, which was he going to still be on the team? Spoiler, on the day we're recording this, we now know the answer to that is no. For those that aren't aware, his wife had expressed support for Putin and the Russian military. Yes, the wife that accepted his proposal from the previous major. They've also had some marital problems leading to some...
It's been on and off as far as I can tell, yeah.
Yes, which has led to some, speculation that, I don't know, I'm not going to indulge in it.
I mean, sadly, he did it all publicly. So guess what? This is what happens when you do it publicly. It's one thing, by the way, if he'd said nothing publicly about this relationship and all those people in CIS region were speculating, I'd say they have to shut the fuck up. That's totally unacceptable, unprofessional. It is unfortunate. When he put it on Broad Street and he did it at the last major, then people are sadly going to follow that like they do their fucking celebrity gossip, aren't they? That's what it's become. Yeah, it's overshadowed this team, unfortunately.
Yeah, and it as we'll get to next episode, it's sort of hard to it's hard to argue, really. I mean, listen, it's the first time I've ever seen a player get dropped for something a wife did. I don't like that as a precedent.
That's mental, isn't it?
Yeah, but I'll also add, I think there were other issues. It's not just that; it's a totality of everything else that's going on. So we'll get into that next time. But anyway, the bottom line is Na'Vi did have a lot of question marks about it coming in. Were we even going to get peak Simple was another question as well. We didn't, not when it was, at least when it mattered, we didn't. And so Na'Vi really kind of made it to this final predicated on two things, in my opinion. First is Electronic's Eternal LAN buff, which is just the stuff of legends. It's absolutely insane how good he gets at LAN compared to what he's like online. Just one of those guys who's built for it, and had an unbelievable performance. I think it was the Nuke game against Ents, where he like just popped off and just destroyed them. And then, of course, Bit, probably the greatest rookie in the history of the game at this point, you would have to say. He was statistically their best player over the tournament. He had huge impact. He was great in this final even. It was a real shame to see him on the losing side. Had they won, he would have been the youngest player ever to get back-to-back majors.
Almost certainly would have won the MVP as well.
And would have won the MVP, yep. So, I mean, listen, you know, Na'Vi were in it at various times, but I do feel that if it was the same Na'Vi without the geopolitical situation and all of the impact it's had on this team that had come to Antwerp, if we were living in the Stockholm world at Antwerp, I think they would have had two majors back to back.
Yes. But this way, the way the year ended, where they closed out all the lands, they won all of them that they attended. Absolutely. If all this stuff doesn't happen, look, you could certainly still have had events where obviously you dipped or you lost to a team and they played well. I think that team would have won two majors. I think they would have had an era. I think they would have just gone nearly, they might have lost maybe one land, maybe they could have lost the Katowice, but they would have had a March otherwise where everything would be top four, top six. They'd win most of the tournaments. I don't know that it'd be as dominant, but I think they would have won. I mean, they almost won this one. I know people are going to think like they didn't. They almost did, guys. They really would have. Like even that second map's a totally different map. If you pick your Inferno into them, not even their best map, and they beat you on it, mate, you're thinking twice on that next map. All of a sudden, the Nuke game's a very different scenario. They play without pressure now. Now it's a free roll for them. And if they get to the third map, guys, the third map, I think was the Ancient. Like, I think they would have won that. I think that actually was, that's where the danger for FaZe.
No,
like.
I totally
thought they had to 2-0, you know. That's why for me, the way FaZe won Inferno, I didn't have any diss on Na'Vi, although certainly Simple played like shit in the final, but whatever. By the way, even as the best possible excuse you could ever have, he's got all that shit going on with his fucking shit back at home and his team's falling apart. He knows it's probably it. That's going to put insane extra pressure. But even with that to one side, it was more like I just looked at FaZe and I was like, bloody hell, if you're going to do these moves and get the result and win the rounds, you're just meant to win. This is one of those days where you just, you know, in the same way as you have the day where everything goes wrong, the red light comes on when you need it to be green, the elevator closes just as you run it. You have the other days where everything's just going flawless. That was what it was for FaZe. Because I really feel like another day, different performance for Simple. They win this major, even without being at peak power. That really showed, that's a testament to how crazy this Na'Vi lineup was. And I think, sadly, the real tragedy of the Na'Vi lineup in-game is, holy fuck, this was the one time ever someone stacked like star-level talents and they could all play at the same time. Like, it's crazy. We even actually the old FaZe clans of Carrigan, which had the billing of that, even they had sort of took turns, or someone had a few months where they weren't as good and then kicked back into gear and was able to chill for a while. This team was an amazing team, and the things they did, it says a lot that they could be off their game and still be in the final like this. What a fucking sick lineup of players.
I know, mad, isn't it? And you know, I think you tweeted out about it, but you know, it's like, you know, alternate timeline, you know, that team could have made a run.
Oh, I'd love to see what they could do. Yeah.
You know, it really...
Love to see it.
Yeah, it really could have matched the old 1.6 2010, like, Na'Vi run, you know, it was just...
The only consolation is this, they will at least still have the status, in my opinion, where if you did that thing, if you took a team at their peak level for one match, they might be the winner for that, mate. They really might. Yeah. I know it's crazy because they don't have the super IG on the brain, but that's the thing about Counter-Strike. If you really can just shoot everyone in the head, you will win. You will win the game.
You will win the game, totally. So yeah, I mean, you know, felt super sorry for them. You know,
absolutely.
And listen, I'll be completely honest. I agree with you. I think chances are, based on Boomich's performance, his demeanor, you know, you probably shouldn't read too much into that, but whatever. I and Simple's tweet immediately afterwards when he said the end, just, you know, almost apropos of nothing in his tweet. I think everybody knew going into this Boomic was out. I think based on the statement Boomic gave when he apologized for his wife's behavior, and he said, I should have said something sooner. I'm really sorry. I love playing for this club. It means everything.
There's an ominous tone to that, isn't there? That's not sort of like, well, we fixed it now, though, guys, so no problems going forward. That almost sounds like I done fucked up in it, but got to take it on the chin. Sorry, bye.
And listen, in that sense, and this is like, I don't know, probably, again, I'll get into it deeper when we start talking about the roster mania stuff. But I'll just say, like, I've never been sold on Boomic as the IGL in this thing.
Sure.
He was, like, say, groomed for success by Zeus. He was his pick. They wanted him to come in and, do this, like, replacement role where he was going to learn how to become a leader from one of the, greats within the organization. But he never got to finish that project, and then Boomic was kind of left there. And it's like, what's Boomic going to tell Simple about, like, how?
Have you ever noticed, by the way, that's the one take we have that's never gotten any backlash from CIS community, including Navi. The headline was never Boomic isn't a real IGL. I think it might even have been a headline from me on one of those sites. Yeah. I've never had, that's not when the Seniors and the Zeus's come out with the daggers. That's not when Simple tells me I'm an idiot and all that. No one seems to give a fuck. I think essentially that's the open secret in that team. I mean, I was saying this when I was doing one of my watch parties, mate, in the game against Heroic, when they're doing like tactical timeouts, because it's like they have to win this gap. They're in the deep shit. They're in the trenches fighting the war. Mate, he's not talking during the tactical timeout. His mouth just, other people are talking. Blade's talking. Like, same thing. What is the most famous thing Blade does at the beginning of each game? He hands out those that like fucking almost like dossiers, like, here's your shit. Like, mate, what's Boomic doing? I'll contrast it like this. One area Carrigan will never get his due, mate. He really was trying to ice skate uphill. He was trying to win that first major with Robban, who, as far as I can tell, does not impose like a system. He's just the old school manager type guy, good guy, glue guy. And then in the modern one, people even forget to give him credit for this, mate. Who was their coach? They didn't have one because Robban's banned. So nobody. A guy just stood behind them who's like the analyst or something. Like, mate, this is mental. Like, that's with no coach. Like, their coach clearly has an enormous impact on the team. And unfortunately, in this case, I feel I know it sounds harsh, but I have to take some of the credit back from Boomic. I've just never seen what he does. I've even tried reading his interviews, mate. I never really get a vibe like he even thinks like an IGL. It's why I think it's a very unique team. I think it'll go down as one of the craziest unique setups of all time of whatever Blade did to that squad.
Basically, I feel like, listen, Boomic obviously does something.
Of course, yes.
But I also think perhaps his strength is being almost like, and this might generate the CIS headlines, let's see, is that he is the blank slate. He is the conduit. I think Zeus, I think Zeus is a narcissist.
Yes.
So I think Zeus would have gone out and picked somebody that was impressionable and would, yes, I will become just like you. And then Zeus could say, see, I have made my avatar in the game. Now, obviously, that's speculation again. But I do think that Blade can't be on the server. Blade can't communicate all the time. You've seen the type of work Blade puts in. I think when Blade was getting criticized when this Na'Vi team was failing back when they were bizarrely insisting on playing Flamey, and even Blade was saying Flamey will never get back to the top in interviews. I think Blade did assess himself and did change things up. In the final, they regressed. There was some old school Na'Vi bullshit at play here, where it was 15 seconds on the clock to execute on a bomb site, really telegraphed. And that was how Na'Vi were playing when they were getting spanked by Gambit, back last year. And so I think probably what happened is Boomic, I think the pressure cooker, I think what was going on in his personal life. I think Boomic broke down in this game.
Sure.
And that was, and he really underperformed as a player as well. And I think that probably tells you that's what he does. He is the guy, soaks it all up, conveys it to the rest of the team, but does it in a way where he's not a big forceful personality, because you don't need a big forceful personality in that team. In fact, the reason Na'Vi used to have problems in the past was they had these veterans and these upstarts all with big personalities, and they would just tear strips off each other. They were essentially a dysfunctional Virtus Pro at one point. So, I think Boomic's gift was that he can put Boomic in his mind mentally to one side and channel a bit of Zeus, a bit of Blade, a bit of whoever he needs to, and make sure everyone stays on point with the tactics.
eSportsBet is the industry's leading crypto odds matrix. They exclusively work off crypto. You deposit crypto, you can bet with it, you withdraw crypto. By the way, when you deposit crypto to the site, they actually give you 10% per year back. Obviously, based on a year, it'll scale based on how long you have it in there. They'll just give you that for having it in the account, basically. You can bet on all esports games, CSGO, all levels of CSGO, League of Legends, Valorant, Rainbow Six, FIFA, Dota 2, whatever game, Rocket League, whatever game you can imagine, they have it. So it's not just for your CSGO needs. Thanks to them, obviously, for sponsoring this particular podcast. And if you're watching something like the Major or the big tournaments like MSI, it's on the site right now. You can go there, you can play for free with the DJT, or you can deposit your crypto. There'll be a link in the bottom down below if you want to deposit your own crypto, and you can get a discount on that. I think it should be up to 50% deposit bonus, up to $200. So you can get a cheeky little amount there to play with extra, so you can have some fun with it. Thanks to eSportsBet. Let's get on with the rest of the show.
Now, that being said, I feel that they were treated to a masterclass.
They were
by FaZe.
By the way, in some ways, I'd even say this to Navi. I actually am so glad they made the final, because I tell you what, if that was heroic or Rents and FaZe still wins, it ain't the same story. By the way, this is why you should always do what I know. I'm going to have a very unique take here for most people. I always pull for the best possible opponent to play the team I like. Like, I'll tell you what, mate, even though now it looks stupid because they lost anyway, I wanted Man City to be in that European Cup final to play against Liverpool and to actually beat them, because they're the rival. They're the one that's supposed to be as good or better, because that's how you make your legacy, mate. You don't want to just win one against anyone. So in this scenario, as much as it sucks for Navi because they had to lose the final, them being there, especially after spanking Ents, made that final so much more special if you are Carrigan, if you are FaZe. That is the final boss of this era of Counter-Strike, and you got to overcome them. So I'm just grateful we even got that final.
Yeah, and like I said, there was a point on Inferno where I was like, wow, they were 8-1.
Oh, way before the end as well. Yeah. It was like in sort of 2/3 of the way through the game, Navi was going to win that series, mate. They looked fucking sick, didn't they? Locked in.
Like FaZe went 8-1 up on T-side Inferno, and something just activated in Navi. And when Carrigan made that mistake, when he had 2 players rotating from the far bomb site, and he decided to peek and try and get the kill.
Yep.
Right. So it would be a 2-on-1, and he died and made a 2-on-2, and then they had to save. I thought then, wow, he's fucked it again. Like, and it will be on Carrigan, because that's going to be the pivotal round on Inferno. But then what happened the next round was Carrigan got a 3-man out of fucking nowhere, like just some god tier rifle play. And what you saw in that moment was a resilience to him individually as a character, because listen, he's always been very nonchalant about what happened in Boston, but it must prey on your fucking mind. I mean, you lost on the biggest stage, biggest tournament, in the most outrageous circumstances, with a team that everyone said this major is going to be too easy for them. It's a gift.
Yep.
It's the glittering all-star FaZe lineup. So, that would keep me up at night. And then when he made that mistake, I was like, here we fucking go again. And no, he actually held his nerve. That Inferno was an unbelievable map of Counter-Strike. For them to take it 19-16 in the end and hold their nerve in overtime, just an incredible story. And
it's mental how that is just the God CS map, isn't it? Like, I know it's been overstated, but it just keeps proving true. Something about that map is just fucking unique. Like, I saw someone even made a joke. I can't remember who it was. It was some pro player, but I almost thought, even though it's a stupid idea, you're almost right. The major final should just basically be a best of 3 of Inferno or something. Like, it almost feels like that. It just gives you the best maps ever, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean, listen, I'll add in this current meta, and my thoughts on this. I feel it's a little bit boring at the moment, a little bit stale. This kind of save meta, silence them floors, being overpowered, etc. But I mean, at the end of the day, when you put good teams on that map, magic happens. So even in a meta like this, the real one where I got to question Navi a little bit was their nuke pick. I think if you pick Ancient there, we get a third map for sure. And then, what would it have been? It probably would have been like, I don't know, maybe an Overpass or a Mirage. Or no, it can't have been Mirage because they took that out, but whatever. We would have had a very different, best of three. Maybe Nuke does get left in there, and who knows what happens after Na'Vi take Ancient. I thought then Nuke has, I thought they must have a secret setup or something on it, but nah, they looked a little bit lost. That said, the story about Nuke is just Reigns' mega performance. That's as good as a player.
That's some movie shit there. I don't think people get it. Look, the Carrigan bigger story is a movie, but the way he played on that map to close the major out as well is that is your wet. That's the wet dream shit of when you're in the backyard, 3, 2, he takes the last shot. He did it the whole game. He actually low key just controlled the best team in the world aside from his, just continuously the whole for both halves. It was mental, mate. That's like I say. You watch that demo to learn how to play outside on Nuke. It's mental.
Yeah, no, I mean, seriously, absolutely insane individual performance. And of course, remember, this is the player that supposedly needed to go if FaZe were ever going to win a big one or win a big trophy, and it's I'm still so disgusted at that JKS bullshit. I honestly, that I know it shouldn't bother me. It bothers me. It really bothers me how fucking stupid everyone was. Supposed FaZe fans as well. I say, you don't love FaZe if you want Rain cut. Here's the mad thing. In a world where so much Counter-Strike royalty gets away with so much bullshit and bad players, are allowed to just languish and but here's what I did 4 years ago.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Fans constantly give him a pass. Rain never got that. Rain's played something like 1,500 maps for this organization, in a variety of roles, in a variety of lineups. He's never complained, never whined. He's always been gracious in interviews about how lucky he is to be there and how he plays well. And yet JKS comes in, like the hot side chick, and you're suddenly you want to get divorced. You're fucking out of your minds, guys. Everyone who called for JKS to join this team and for Rain to be dropped. And I know you tweeted it, and we're going to get to that.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah, here's the difference though, mate. As usual, the facts bear me out as they always will. Because if you go and look, notice this is how you know there aren't real journalists in this scene except me and you, mate. How am I the only one who noticed the timestamp? Yeah. The bloody time's written right on it. It was during map 1 of the final. When they were just doing all miracle shit.
I know.
It's called a fucking hot take, innit? Yeah. By the way, if after the event you said to me, so would you do the trade right now? I would go, well, you've got to give at least Rain one chat. He was out for COVID. I would give him Pro League. Spoiler, when he wins Pro League, no problem. Yeah. He didn't hear me say before this major, of course, they're not going to win this major. I haven't got JK. No, that was a fucking hot take, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. It's and not only that, though, you fucking explicitly said on the subsequent podcasts that no, obviously you keep Rain, so it's whatever. But anyway, the point is, because I saw a Reddit thread that basically, I'll work in a little bit of petty grievances for the fans, but I saw a Reddit thread where it was 3 months ago, Thorin said that Rain should be cut because he got the MVP. You all did. You all said it. You all said it. You all said it.
Yeah, they did.
You even upvoted threads demanding FaZe seller commemorative JKS jersey because he was so amazing, and you're oh my god, you people are so fucking fickle. It's absolutely outrageous. But yeah, I've never understood it, why Rain isn't treated like CS royalty. Yes, in the online era he did have some bad performances. Yes, if we rewind at a time when Carrigan's going, we're not even going to try in the online era.
Yes,
I need a year to build a team or whatever it is. If you go back to that time, yes, then maybe you could make an argument about Rain's underperforming or whatever, although just to mercilessly cut him after everything he's done to the club still would leave a fucking nasty taste in any.
By the way, another reason I also wouldn't actually have cut him after that event, even if possible. He only missed the final because of COVID.
I know.
You know what I mean? Just on the face of it, you've got to at least let him get better. I know.
Again,
he's got to have at least one more chance.
Mental.
Normal.
All of it mental. And then, so trust me, the fact that he just fucking got his dick out and helicoptered in.
It's mental. I know.
Oh, mate, I was loving it because that's the ultimate fuck you to all of those idiots.
Yes.
The ultimate fuck you. Not only did my team win, I won it for my team against the best team in the world, potentially, right? On the biggest stage and the oldest MVP at a major. What now? Where's your JKS god now, you fucking cretins? Gone. Nowhere. He doesn't count. He doesn't matter. He could never do
Oh, no.
On JKS's best day, he could never do what Rain did in this final. That's a stone cold fact. He's never done anything akin to that at any stage in his career, even when he was getting into the HLTV top 20s.
No, this was God tier.
God tier performance.
Absolutely.
That is only a handful of players could do that. So it's absolutely outrageous. But yeah, happy for FaZe. Let's talk a little bit about Carrigan. Gets his major at 32. Gives a great speech. By the way, they've been releasing the comms from that run, and I would urge anyone, if you want to hear what a good IGL sounds like, go and listen to them. It's calm, it's clear, there's jokes, there's humor, despite them being under immense pressure. This is why Carrigan is always going to be in this GOAT conversation now for me.
Sure. I mean, like I say, even that angle is never even given the credit. Like, not only did he do it with a unique lineup, no one's ever done it with the international roster, did it without a coach, by the way, playing against arguably the best coach in the game right now. Most people would give Blade that status, against the reigning major champions and the GOATs. Like, fucking hell, how much more do you want to stack the deck? By the way, even when people say that, yeah, but Simple didn't play that well, guess what? That's normal. Simple's actually an alien in the sense that, except for this one scenario, normally does always just play super well. Everyone else gets championships against people not playing that well. By the way, when did that ever get used against Astralis when they won a couple of majors against Simple? Never. OSK when they won one against. Never. It'll never be used as an excuse for anyone else. That's how haterism reveal itself. You only use it for the one player, not for everyone else. So I think this was an incredible run. And like I said on the other shows what we talked about, the craziest thing about it to me was this. Because you're the IGL, half the time what you do is invisible. Like, no one really knows, was that a great mid-round call? Or did your player just run out and shoot two people in the head? It's always the eternal dilemma if you don't have the comms, right? But first of all, not only is this so perfect he won, with all these comm videos he's been releasing for the last 3 months, because you see him make the calls, do the plays, make space for people, they get the kill following up. But even better, like, he was making fucking actual round-winning plays in this tournament. Like, as much as people remember some of the players in that final, tell you the one that no one ever remembers. You remember that mad 4K he got from the fucking library where he just never peeked out and he kept that angle, and he was even killing fucking Simple with the AWP. Like, mate, these are monster kills. Like, that's the sort of shit where if you put the different nameplate on, that's like the old clip. Remember when HLTV org used to always put like the multi-kill on the fucking front page? That would be like the Carrigan versus Navi clip would be the top of the fucking page. It'd have 1 million likes. That'd be like a highlight play. Like, I thought the way he played in general in this tournament, what I loved about it was...
Carrigan out-fragged drops and twists.
Oh, no, he did.
In this final, yeah.
What I found so gangster about the way they won this tournament is he did both. He did the IGLing, and then actually he did a decent job fragging, which, by the way, he is 32 years old, and he was never a sick fragger in CSGO anyway. That's how you know the guy really was just like, fuck it, going out on my shield. I either lose another major final or I just take this major. Because there's another thing. With the way Navi eventually played on Inferno, it wasn't gifted to you. They didn't just break after you were up early and front run against them. They made you work for that, and they fucking worked for it and won. So I think it's just one of the most satisfying major wins I've ever seen.
So the question, and then we'll do a review of the major overall, what we thought about it as a spectacle. But the question now about FaZe is, are we poised to enter, it's the dreaded E word, Duncan, are we poised to enter into a FaZe era? They've obviously got, they won Pro League, they won Katowice, won the major. Coming up, they've got this scuffed IEM Dallas event, which, by the way, doesn't even count. If
it shouldn't. That shouldn't even be on the Grand Slam thing at this point in time, but it probably will be.
But then 2 weeks after that, Blast Premier, and then obviously in July, IEM Cologne.
Yes.
Now, where do we need to get to in terms of tournaments accrued before we start saying FaZe are hands down the number one team? We are in a FaZe era. Everyone's going to have to work incredibly hard to beat them.
The key thing for me is if they just keep stacking the events. Because like you say, if you could win, look, the Dallas one's a bit scuffed. Like that one, I do think that's one of the reasons why, if people don't know, I had to be harsh with the Team Liquid era, and I couldn't make it an era because some of the events, especially some of the earlier ones, were the ones where not everyone attended. So they count for you, but they don't always, every event isn't each trophy is not of equal value, of obviously. I think essentially if you FaZe, the good news is this, the way is open for you. You look at your other rivals, a lot of them either aren't winning or Navi's about to have to change lineup. So it's right there for you, but I do think you have to stack these trophies. You probably have to win nearly all these trophies, I'd imagine, because the next major is so far away. You have to do it in between the majors if you're going to make this an era. So if you don't win, another rule I made a few years back, I think it's a relevant rule, it could have worked for Navi here, is you've got to at least be like, essentially, you've got to be a key storyline even when you lose. Like if they beat you in the final, it could still be your era if you win the next tournament. Like, you were still the defining factor of that tournament. Someone beating you was the key storyline, not that they won the tournament. So I think if they run the table this summer, I think it's doable. The reason their era for me would be very unique as well is because they don't blow people out in these big games. They're not the team that shit stomps you. They don't have a map where they can never lose and win 16-4 every day. They're not like any of the great teams in history. What I love about this team is they really do seem to live and die off Carrigan's calling, because they win so many close games. They win by the small margins. They win by the players sort of getting just enough out of it. So if they do, it'll be the most exciting era ever, because I think this team, I would favour them to beat almost anyone in a best of three, but I never know how they're going to do it. They always take it to the bloody wire, and they are an amazing team to watch. That's why I get more of a vibe like the Fnatic 2015 team. That's what I keep comparing them to, because they also were the team where, like, at the end they had all year and everyone gave them the credit and they were the best. But man, they could fucking, it could be hard work for them to win tournaments, and did they have to do comebacks and play against top teams? So I think it's on the table. It's just not an obvious era.
Yeah. And look, I think in terms of what Carrigan got, I think finally he's got like the four players around him he wants. You know, I feel there was always going to be a problem back in the superstar era. It was always going to come up. It was always going to happen with the TSM era as well back then. You know, those Danish players wanted to win. They liked Glaive. You know, they'd had a few disappointments. They were big personalities, very forceful in what they wanted. It got to a stage where they weren't even going along with Carrigan's veto, so they cut him and replaced him. And it was no different either with FaZe. FaZe had to make a choice. The choice was Nico or Carrigan, and obviously they went with that. But I think that was, again, it was always liable. I'll tell you this.
By the way, how fucking, even though Carrigan, sadly, here's the bad news, guys. He actually is a really cool guy. So I don't think he actually holds any ill will to Nico at all. But this way, he's a bigger man than I am. Because if I had that microphone and I've just won that major, and you ain't won shit with me in the meantime, and even better, you were in FaZe for most of that time. I'm at least saying summer. I'm at least saying summer, Anna. I'm dropping some little line or something in that line. Come on.
But like, what's actually crazy is as well, I think I've seen Carrigan sort of like praise Nico and say positive things about him and stuff. And it's like, considering, you know, I'll tell you what, there was one take we had, I think it was on this show, and you might have subsequently tweeted it out as well, as is your way, where you said, you know, this year, Carrigan's phase will be more successful than
it was last year. Yeah, for 2021, I said that. Yes.
And I think it wasn't true that year, but it's now unquestionably true.
I was a year off, sadly. Yes,
you were a little bit ahead of your time. But I mean, as a take, it's actually aged pretty well, because if you go to the totality of when you made the tweet to where we are now, then it's unquestionable.
What people didn't get was the point of that is essentially something I've changed my perspective on in Counter-Strike. I'm not like the plebs. I used to be a pleb as well. I used to follow the best players. If I have a choice between these two, you can either start your team with the best player in the world or the best IGL in the world. Best IGL in the world is a way better team to start. That can, as you can see, when you have Carrigan, you don't even need to have the top 5 players in the world. You could just have like the 10th, the 12th, and the 13th, and that's enough. If you have the best player in the world, suddenly there's a lot of IGLs won't get it done, mate. Like, that's the problem. He had Nexa. I knew he's not going to be getting a Carrigan type, Glaive type person. So where's he going to get his person in the next few years? Obviously, in that one, it turns out Nico did actually play a superstar Counter-Strike, and he carried them through that phase. But yeah, I mean, you can see why I made the point now that, like, essentially it was a point about team building. Like, I just felt like Carrigan gets to a major before Nico does. Sadly, still applies now.
Well, it must have been especially rough for Nico, and you have to wonder,
of course,
because, like, listen, I think he's done a lot of maturing, and I think maybe some of the speculation now, when you say, "Oh, Nico's gonna be, you know, wanting to cut Alexi and make himself IGL," it's probably, you know, not true now. It probably was true back in, you know, Nico Sports.
Sure,
it was true back in FaZe when Carrigan got ousted, but I don't think it's true now. But I will say, if it was ever going to come back, if that devil on his shoulder was ever gonna, you know, puff out from hell and start talking to him again, it's gonna be now, watching your old, you know, IGL raise a trophy you desperately want. And by the way, it will define your whole career if you don't win one.
For sure. That's why I give the analogy. They are like the Shaq and Kobe. Like, now it's all going to be about, now guess what, Nico? Now it's like, He can't win. You can't win without Carragher, or did you need Carragher, or should you stay with him? So now the problem is, first of all, it should fire you up anyway. But now you've got to go get your major to get that shit off your back and get it back to an interesting convo. And now you can have your points. Because I agree with your premise. Here's the point now. It is not that I think Nico is an egomaniac who is demanding the team do this. He's forcing Carlos, like, I won't get played, or me and Hunter will leave if you don't do that. It's not that. Here's the problem. I actually think in terms of how he behaves in the team, he seems to have fixed it. He seems to be mature. My problem is just this. I think me and him fundamentally have a different perspective on the game Counter-Strike and how you build teams. And I just believe when he is asked for his opinion, which as a star player, he should be asked for, in my opinion, you at least crowdsource from your stars because they're the people you're going to build around. I just think he has different opinions than me. And unfortunately, they will lead to, I think, some of the same problems. It's not that it's like the attitude's gone, but essentially my disagreement remains, I think. And we'll see how that plays out.
But yeah, so just to wrap up the phase talk, as I said, I feel this is a lineup that just a blend of personalities on the team. It's tailor-made for Carragher. I think this is like, if you were to ask him now, and I haven't had time to talk to Finn since the major, but I think if you were to ask him, like, in terms of personalities, this is the best lineup you've ever had. I think it's absolutely.
Yes.
Twists has done what he had to do. Leaving NA can't have been easy. He could have been like every other North American player of all time. He's got the looks, he's got the skills. He could have stayed at Team Liquid, and even if he'd been dropped from the team and been a streamer and made millions, could have gone to Valorant, made millions. Didn't, made a very difficult decision to kind of break away from that, gets a major, loving it, loving.
Didn't you find that so silly as well, that was when those fucking Valorant players just jumped on him? It's like, bro, of all the people you can't clap back at if you're a Valorant player, it's Twists. He has put everything on the line, and he's even won the ultimate reward for doing it. So, listen, I get that you're right, there are problems, but maybe take a page out of his book. He's showing you the way, boys.
Yeah, and I think, so that's one there. Brokey as well. Remember, Brokey brought in by someone who isn't even in the team anymore, who was his biggest advocate. He's evolved into, one of the best AWPers in the world. Wasn't even an AWPer when he started in the team. Just a good, hardworking guy. Obviously, Rain we've talked about. And, and then you complete the Voltron finally by bringing in Rops. And Rops is a guy who, he wasted so much of his prime talent in a mouse sports team, was unbelievably loyal to those guys. But when he did put his foot down and say, come on, enough's enough, I've got to go get mine at some point. And if it's not going to be here, it's going to have to be somewhere else. He finally finds himself in a team where he now can rightly say, I am one of the greats. I am one of the great players. I'm winning these trophies now. I'm winning majors now. So I think everyone's going to be super on board with Carragher's system. He's given them a taste of success that many of these guys have never had. And I think that's going to bode well for the future of the team and the cohesion within the team. All other things, if G2 aren't going to get their shit together, if Vitality aren't going to get their shit together, if now V don't make the right replacement, this FaZe team will dominate for a long time.
I even think, in line with what you're saying, the other reason why I just feel like, look, it's not inevitable they get the era, but while I feel like they've got a good chance in it, it's because I also get the vibe from this team. Dude, they haven't had to, but they could handle a loss. If they lost one of these close games, I feel like they're one of the few teams could take it on the chin, come back without it affecting you mentally, without people having arguments, without anyone feeling, I didn't get my position. I feel like they're one of the only ones that can fucking take one like that and come back in the next match. And thus far, they haven't even been required to, really.
Yeah. So let's talk about the majors of spectacle, and then we'll end the episode. So obviously, I was streaming, but I always make a point of watching the VODs. I want to see you did a good job. And see where we can improve and see what everything was like. So look, I'll just open slate. What we'll end on the positives.
Come on in.
Well, go on. Yeah, you tell me what pissed you off about this.
Oh, loads. This is another example of how Counter-Strike the game is the panacea that cures all ills, because the bloody tournament wasn't brilliant, but people at the end just thought it was. Why did they think it was brilliant? Because Imperial did a miracle run, because Spirit proved more than you ever thought it's possible, because Na'Vi came back online, and because FaZe won and Carragher won the end. None of those have anything to do with PGL. Not a single fucking one has anything to do with PGL and anything they did. They did nothing about that. Everyone in the server did those, and the other tournaments in the circuit built up that storyline. So let's start with this, right? Let's start with the beloved talent, which everyone loves to praise to the heavens. I'll just say it right now. It's my special specialty. I have earned the right to have this opinion. I consider myself an authority above anyone listening to me right now. I have worked many desks. I have worked more desks at majors than anyone else in the history of this game. The desk was all right. It was a bit stilted. I thought the floor wasn't very good. I thought some of the lineups just didn't make sense for the scope of some of the matches. I would have used very different lineups in some of the semis and the quarters. And I genuinely thought like the desk was all right. I thought certain people did a very good job, but I thought it didn't actually have like the same sort of flow and vibe that I would want the major desk to have. And one reason why I have to obviously go to it is they chose not to hire probably maybe the second best analyst in the world. If I give Maniac the top spot, Nick Yanko's number 2. It's 1A, 1B for me anyway. I think that was a massive oversight. I don't know why they put Devil Walker in that position where they hired him last minute and essentially he's a rookie earning a stripe spot on the major. I don't get what you're even doing at that point in time. You are set up to fail there. Even if Devil Walk does a 10 out of 10 job for Devil Walk, it ain't going to be out of 10 out of 10 Yanko because he can't. Essentially, you have to believe experience means nothing. Reps mean nothing. Technique is nothing. I've seen Yanko when he began. Yanko wasn't who he is now. It took him years to get to the point. So I thought that was a silly mistake already. And then finally, on the actual major itself, where was the shoulder content? Doesn't exist. Nonsense. There was no shoulder content for another major. Then, and by the way, the worst thing about that, I'll just say it right now, since they have no problem throwing me under the bus with a show match, mate. I asked Silviu, the man himself who runs PGL, before Stockholm, I told him, you need to get loads of shoulder content and documentaries and things done. And he was like, yes, we will have it all. None for 2 majors in a row. And the worst part about that, and also, by the way, even with some, like, first of all, I thought there were tech problems throughout the playoffs, even to the last day I was hearing those clicks on people's mics. I hate that sound, by the way, as someone who's worked desks.
Yeah.
As soon as I hear that, like, clipping sound when you're talking on your mic, which means the sound guy can't even do the most basic aspect of his job, I get triggered already because those are what then later come and have static come in your ear. You get one of those blow up sounds that you don't see on the stream, but we hear in our ear and just deafens us. Like, I hate all that shit because it's such amateur hour. And I'll tell you what, here's what you don't want to hear if you're PGL. I don't get that if I go and work an ESL Cologne event. I don't get that if I'm on blast on one of their desks. I get a top quality professional setup where they will have all those things ironed out. And if they don't, Richard, I know that they're going to get to it. I don't even have to go and tell them. The amount of times me and you at that last major personally went and told them, you do know there is a problem now on your stream. We cannot, and they would be going, this is how I knew they were incompetent. They wouldn't just go, we'll send a guy and he'll test it. They would be going, so wait, so what's happening? You're hearing, I don't need to explain this, dickhead. You put the headset on, play your little sound, and you figure it out. You're the audio guy. I'm a fucking guy who's supposed to be there to go, Cadian shouldn't celebrate like that. I think Nico's not that good. Like, my job ain't to be an audio tech fucking guy, is it? I'm not there to error test this whole fucking system. But sometimes when people like me and you are at the event, we almost care about the event more than bloody they do. Or not really, but it feels like that. And I got the vibe again because I was watching the social medias of the people who work the event. Some of these are my friends. Mate, I was already getting the vibe. The producer was overloaded again. He was going through fucking his second tour of Vietnam and they were just surviving off what they could. I could tell from that vibe, from some of the comments and the way he was getting shout outs from certain talent. Like, that guy was getting the beating from life again. And the real thing I hate about all this is, one, PGL almost go out of their way to flex that they have money, so they're choosing not to spend it. And then 2, because the major again has done monster numbers and was loved for the storylines. You notice we've got the 2 best possible storylines from these 2 majors, the storylines we all wanted. Because of that, it will all be forgotten. And the fact that at the moment no one else except the ESL wants a bloody major means that I don't think we even improve the situation. So what worries me is I don't even feel like PGL is incentivized to even listen to anything I just said.
Yeah, I mean, listen. So when I did a review on stream, having watched all of odds, and so similar thoughts on 2 of the topics. I thought the desk, first of all, they fucked up when they only hired 3 people. I don't even know how you do that, because 4 is just such an obvious number.
Yep.
To have for analysts. Gives you 2 and 2, means you can mix it up. People get time off, series off, two series a day in the playoffs, like.
Theoretically, I would have been hired, but that makes you ask the question: would that have also still just been the same number of people, or was I going to be the fault? Who the fuck knows at this point in time? But yeah.
Well, that's a weird one. It might have been that what you turning it down created this like cascading event. I don't know, but the bottom line is.
Oh, I forgot one other thing as well. One last thing to say as well, because I must say this for the sake of by the numbers. Show match was fucking garbage again. Is this a joke? Are you trying to piss me off? Is this mental? I'm trying to actively piss me off here. Because the worst thing is, people know this now. I would make the most straight fucking fire box office show match you ever seen.
Yeah, I know. Well, we did it. We did a show match on the No Majors Club, which you can go watch the VOD of, and we took a mod where it was like every round it would like be like low gravity, or you would get a bug line from Danger Zone. We had Goose Breeder from CLG Red take on Steako. They drafted the talent, did a draft with it. I thought it was a really, really. We got a double overtime. I think it was on Nuke, and obviously people are flying across the map, gunning down each other. Stunner was there, like Henry G played. He rolled back the years. He was taking it super serious. Dust Moret team killed Steako in a must-win round. Oh, mate, it was. It had it all. It had it all, and it's like, you know, like it was sort of cobbled together in a couple of days, and you know, and
sounds better than theirs, mate. They still play theirs like real matches. It's so stupid, isn't it? I know.
Like players don't get it.
No,
like,
they don't at all.
No one's going to judge you on what you do in a show match, you know. But that's why you have to get the right player, and not all players, you know. And because also as well, by the way, like if you want to do a super serious one, which spoiler in sports, no exhibition match like of this type is super serious.
No.
But then you have to stipulate in your contract, if you attend the major and you are deemed to be one of the best players at the major and you are not playing at the final, you may be called upon to play in the show match, and it is mandatory. And then you can have a Nico playing in a show match, and you can have all of these, and you want to play serious then when it's like 10 of the best players in the world. Fine, I've had it. It might make for an interesting game. But yeah, I agree. Show matches are really like people don't execute the concept correctly around show matches in esports. Put it this way, I never thought I would say this: the ones that ESL were doing, where it was like Henry G versus
the caches.
Sponge.
Yeah, they at least had a theme. Yeah, there was a logic to that. Yeah,
you know, and celebrities turning up to talk shit and pies in the face. I thought that was all whack at the time, but compared to this, it's
it's fucking night and day, isn't it? Yeah.
So anyway, I went and watched all of ours. My thoughts are very similar to yours on the desk. Yanko should have been there. It's criminal he wasn't. I think you put Maniac with Yanko. They're not only great at what they do, they're not only number 1 and 2, but they are also fantastic complement to each other.
Absolutely.
Maniac makes up with his, you know, high emotions and expressiveness, really makes up for Yanko stoic in his demeanor. You know, it's like it's just a no-brainer. You want them to do in the final. I thought Devil Walk, you know, yes, okay, you brought in a tenured pro. I love Devil Walk, by the way, as a person known him a long, long time. When I was setting up the player union before the CSPPA existed, he was the first guy I went to. Thought he would have been a fantastic advocate for players. And anyway, that being said, definitely not ready for the major. He knows it. He was a bit nervous on the first few days as well. And like when it was him and Pimp, it's like, mate, like I can't.
You're not doing anyone a favour there either in terms of the fans, are you?
Exactly.
Again, listen, I disagree with some of the fans' opinions about Pimp, but as a team, you've got to understand what you're doing when you put those people in those scenarios.
Well, it was shocks I felt sorry for as well, because she was constantly trying to coax something out of them. And you've got a guy who's like nervous and inexperienced, and you've got another guy.
You were never going to get the fun vibe she was going for.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, so those death segments were pain, but they were few and far between. Obviously, you know, you put Maniac with anyone, he brings out the best in all of the people. But, you know, if you just had Yanko there, or, you know, hell, if you want to get an ex-pro, there's a number of people who would have done it, that like big personalities and stuff like that. You know, you can go and do it. And remember, think outside the box. Like, think about who's entertaining. Everyone said I was mental when we brought Mo on the E-League. I think that was a genius.
No, he's obviously box office, of course.
Exactly. And that's what I mean. It's like people don't get what box office is. Like that X factor that makes people entertaining. Like they don't even have to know what they're talking about if they can express it in a way that makes you want to engage with it. So, you know, crazy stuff. But anyway, overall, I thought the desk, probably in terms of the broadcast, was the weakest part of all interconnected talents. But I thought Shocks did a fantastic job. I hope she sticks around in CS. I thought Freya was underused. I wanted to see more of Freya on the desk. But when she was on, she did brilliant. And obviously a very different vibe to Shocks. More of a, almost like, I don't want to use the word professional because that's not what I mean, but like it felt more like you're watching a current events program. Really topical, really polished. You know, she's come on leaps and bounds as well. The shoulder content, garbage. I didn't even talk about this in my review, so I'm glad you brought it up. Why is the shoulder content for the major Banks walking around Antwerp eating chips?
I know.
Like, what is that?
The joke is, even for the shoulder content, we're in 2015 now. You remember when they'd have like Parler drinking wine with shocks or something like, out of like a fucking Dixie cup. Like, what is it?
Yeah,
how's this content? Like, what?
No, but like, but what you forget about that is, well, you probably do remember it, but like what people forget about it is that concept was sold to us saying, oh, we're gonna have some wicked shoulder content for the major. I think it was Cluj-Napoca, that one, and they said, yeah, wine tasting with shocks. And I'm like, holy shit, like you're going to go to a wine tasting and have him assess all the wines and give his thoughts, and you're going to play it up for laughs and all that. That's a banger concept.
Sure.
Come up with that concept. That's because it actually is a reflection of Shock's personality. He loves wine. He loves all that Gaelic tradition. It's core to his personality. Brilliant concept. In execution, Shock's drinking a bottle of wine, sat on a fountain like he's a wino.
Absolutely, like a homeless guy, yeah.
Like, is this real? Like, you can't be serious. Like that is not the concept. So here's something for everyone in esports. If your concept's good and you can't execute it, don't make a dog shit 2 out of 10 version of it. Shelve the concept for a time when you can, because otherwise you can't go back and revisit that now. You know, I mean, it's been long enough that you probably could, and people would think it was straight fire. Shocks may as well be a professional wine taster now. He's barely a Counter-Strike player. So, you know, whatever. But anyway, I've seen it time and time again. And as I said, as your opening shoulder content for the major, hi, I'm James Banks. Did you know in Antwerp they love fries, French fries? And actually, they're called French fries despite originating in Belgium, because I guess some guy got lost or something. Anyway, I'm going to this place to eat chips. And I was like, right, this is a bit, right? This is a fucking joke. Here's the reality. The one fact Banks brought to the table is a myth. It's not even true. The term French fries goes way back. So I'm like, what is happening? Why is it just Banks? Why is it always Banks eating food? Why is that all the shoulder content PGL do? Why is it just Banks eating food? It's mental. Like that cannot be how we chronicle. Do you remember when we used to have like, this is a profile of me, or this is
yes.
It's Banks eating chips, guys. It's Banks eating chips. I can't tell you how much of a come down that is. It's Banks eating chips.
I'll even tell you a reason why I think it's particularly egregious this event was so poor in that regard. Because since you had Freya as one of your hosts, for people who don't know, when at Flashpoint, we for Flashpoint 2 did a bunch of sort of like, I wouldn't say documentaries, they were more like profile story pieces about like a team. She did all of those entirely off her own accord. I didn't tell her to do them. She just came to me and said, I have some ideas for these things, and essentially, can I go away and do it? Did it, like, sent me it just to review it. Like, do you think there's anything wrong with it? Like, you know, I'd maybe found like one historical date, like that was 2016 or 2015. Aside from that, she did the whole thing herself. Then she just recorded it, and they were like, look, they weren't like the most crazy edited things, but they had all the game footage and stuff in. Like, this is someone, by the way, who, if you understood their skill set, they could do that. They could actually take those skills that she could have sort of built up a story about FaZe. Will they win this major? It's all or nothing for Carrigan and Main. You could have the story with Navi. You could have the story. You could pick a fucking half a dozen out.
But Duncan, does she like chips?
Because here's the silly thing people won't get. Unlike actually someone like Shocks, who is someone who might like Counter-Strike, but comes from a different game and is choosing for industry reasons, and in this case, because it's in a home country, to come and work in our game. Freya is an actual CSGO fan who became a professional and now is good as a professional. Those people, they're worth their weight in gold. Like, you don't have to tell her to do some research for this thing. First of all, she knows the storylines. She's followed it as a fan. She's a total legitimate fan. Like, if people don't know, she was a fan from something mental like 2015 or something mad, when she was just, she was probably a teenager at the time, who knows? So if you have someone like that, why are you not using that? Why is that untapped potential? Why don't you have that person with a bloody camera crew? In this case as well, like I say, she wasn't even going to be on the desk all the time. They could even be creating mini pieces that go through the event that sort of follow the story. There's so much you can do with these people. We have so much talent in this game, but we're not using it.
Yeah, and like I say, and you know, the real reason that happens, it's because you're putting out fires the whole time at your event.
Of course. Yep. If people don't know, as far as I can tell, I wasn't at this one, but every other PGL event I went to, it's like, you think on day 2, is this event even going to finish? And when they finish, it's sort of like a fucking gift. Like, it's mental, mate. They're never going to get a 10 out of 10 performance. As you say, they're just keeping the fucking boat from sinking. That's what they're doing half the time.
But here's what I will say, some positives now, and I'll get your positives as well. I thought, you know, there was a lot of speculation about how the casters were going to cope. There was 4 debutants at a major, you know, for some, first time with a big crowd. And, you know, I think there was some 10 out of 10 casting here at this event. I thought Harry and Hugo, that Spirit Phase game, like I said, that was the game for me. That cast was exceptional. I think Lawrence and Scrawny continue to prove that actually, like, they're the hipsters pick, you know. I know obviously Machine and Sponge, obviously they're like, the way I was comparing it in my review is they're like almost like a luxurious like smorgasbord, because what Alex is super good at, obviously alongside the casting, because he's been a host and, you know, stage host, desk host, he's done it all. He understands the sense of timing. So when you want him in a final, because when the game is over and people get up, he's still going. He's still setting it up for the trophy lift and everything else. And so, you know, you don't have to come back to the desk.
No, he has the gravitas,
and have me narrate it, which we used to do at events, if people remember. And it was a bit jarring because the casters would have to sign off while there was still stuff happening on screen, and then I'd have to come in and narrate that stuff. It's way better this way. And so Alex is a master at that. And then obviously Sponge, when he talks about what's happening in a game, especially disappointment or mistakes, because we all know how his career was, and how he came from a region that was like, you know, he was a plumber and he came from a region that didn't have a lot of opportunities and he didn't have a lot of like material success in the game. You know, when he's talking about that stuff, like, it's his lived experience. There's like a credibility and an authenticity there. And so for the big moments, the highs, the lows, I think Sponge is perfect. Like, he knows what he's talking about too. Obviously with the game was an IGL who always punched above his weight and never got the respect he deserved. So unfortunately for the other casters, you know, probably you're not going to get a final if that's an option. Although, listen, Sponge and Alex are such, you know, good people. They'll probably be like, look, we don't have to do all the finals, you know, because like that, there's all a TO is going to want you there, but sometimes you're going to say, look, let the other guys have a final. We'll do a semi-final. We'll sit in the bleachers, watch the game for a change. Once you get a few finals under your belt, they matter less anyway. So, you know, I thought the casting was like knockout. Vince had a fantastic performance as well in the quarterfinal. He did. He left it all hanging out there. Really, really did. You know, doesn't know if he'll get to do another major, but that one certainly makes up for him being criminally overlooked in his career. That is a fantastic cast. And so I was super happy with all of the casting at the event. Obviously, as I said, I thought Shocks did a great job. I think from a broadcast perspective, yeah, there was all those tech problems. I mean, it's PGL. They're obviously content to operate at a level where it comes baked in. You know, it comes baked into the event. I had to laugh, by the way, watching the Champions League final. It was like watching a fucking esports event at times.
The beginning shit was stupid as fuck, wasn't it? But they weren't even telling you what was happening. I know it's stupid,
no, but at one point, the guy who was interviewing fucking Stevie G was going, and sorry, I can't hear you, Stephen. I've got the singer in my ear. I think we're on the same frequency. I'm like, bro. By the way, also watching Rio Ferdinand, Steve Gerrard, Michael Owen not be able to fill for the 30 minutes.
Oh, it's hilarious. They'll never know what we can do.
Yeah,
I know exactly.
That's like esports is fucking mega. Like, you know what I mean? We would put together, we'd have a graphic design and quickly knock some graphics up. Me and Duncan would do a fucking 1 hour long podcast.
No, these guys are bottling it, mate.
Yeah. So anyway, whatever. But the you know, PGL are obviously content to operate on a level. They're never going to be a blast. Then they're not even an ESL, right? So whatever. Fine, but I thought they made improvements. It was certainly better. They certainly fixed problems when they happened faster. And so overall, for me, where I place this major, you know, in the great pantheon of majors, it's never going to overtake a Boston or a Columbus or a Cluj-Napoca or, you know, a Cologne. It's not going to get close to that. It's certainly better than Krakow, better than the first one in that winter, better than the last one they did, better than, I mean, face it, London, the worst of all time. So, you know, look, they did a middle of the pack major. This was, you know, like you say, a major for me that was held upright by incredible performances by the talent pool, mostly, and fantastic storylines that actually delivered in real time. That's my take on it. I don't know where you place it.
I mean, I would probably be similar. I think it'd be in the middle of the pack. And the problem for me is, like, there are loads of positives. Like, I think Shocks did a great job. I do think, actually, the point you pointed out was maybe the only flaw, which is I think she really, this is the problem. Remember, she's watched the last major, which was all the old school people who are the old aesthetic and vibe of Counter-Strike. So I think she came into this event ready to queue people up and get some fucking sick bands, some funny clips on ready, some back and forth, because obviously she can do it. There wasn't much there, because remember, even some of the best people like Maui, they're still, that's their first major.
I did mention Maui, by the way, so I want to give a special shout out to him. I thought first major, but put it this way, you know, I thought he had a better performance than Pimp, just in terms of overall packaging, how he expressed his opinion, how he articulated his opinion, how he wasn't backwards about coming forwards about that opinion. I thought Maui Snake definitely was like, you know, Shocks, like you say, was looking to him as a go-to on the desk, especially in some of those drier segments. But yes, obviously at your first major, you don't just want to come out and go, simple something fucking whack this event or whatever, you know. Hey, it's falling overrated, guys. You don't want to wade into that one, do you? So yeah, I mean, but I thought overall, I thought he did a great job. He's come on leaps and bounds.
And then the other thing is, I thought the casting in general was very good. Yeah, obviously some of these people already were good enough to do it. They just hadn't had the chance. They earned their wings. They were able to do it. They made the first jump, as it were, in certain circumstances. Also, it was correct that Alex and Chad do the final. They are the best. They also have the experience. They also have the hack, which is even when they're experienced as a casting duo, they did all the events as the other roles. So like they do just have an OP advantage over everyone. And like you say, if you want the final to, here's the thing, the game has to do its part. But if the game does its part, they are going to hit all the right timings and setups that will elevate that game to be something special. So I thought they did a great job. The one downside I would obviously say about the casting is it'll be impossible to watch a match like this in an era where I know they're available to work and not miss the voice of Moses and Anders. Those are two names that absolutely, in my opinion, should be on a major playoff at some point in time. And it does, I'm sorry, this is another thing. You can be the best caster in the world now. It doesn't have the same connection as when I hear Anders talk. When I hear Anders' voice, I suddenly start thinking this moment could match up with the greatest in history. This could be in the pantheon, etc. You actually need him there to help add some of the clarity and gravitas to the newer casters. They want to take the baton, not just have the baton be waiting for them on the ground for them to pick up.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, listen, yeah, it's a shame. But overall, you know, a major that went by with only the type of hitches you would expect. But for now, I think we'll put a pin in it. That was all of the major discussions about the major, and then we can move on. So on the next episode of Revenge of By the Numbers, as always, we're going to be hitting it hot. We're going to be talking about Boomich and what it means for Na'Vi. We're going to be talking about ESIC and have they finally jumped the fucking shark? Spoiler, yes, they have. We're going to talk about the start of roster mania, and of course, how did IEM Dallas get so fucking scuffed? It's been a mess. Plenty to talk about. Hopefully, we'll be coming at you a lot quicker in future. So until then, make sure you take care of yourselves. That was it from us. See you soon.
Chris is still into the picture. Oh, still very much in the round. Oh, Chris, he's found three. It's down to a 2-on-2. Chris, can he close this with an ace? Oh my God!
He gives him a chance at least, and this CZ kill could be everything. Finally, Zeus, he does something!
Looking for a second, he connects it. Oh, and he gets a third as well. Surely he's not going to pull this off. Oh, Caldera, the man, the myth, the beast.
Zywoo, no help really, but he's still hitting shots. He's already got